going to start off this morning with our little picture up here, which hopefully makes a lot of sense to appreciate, I think, all of the pieces of the puzzle that are at your fingertips. And it sort of starts with the fact that do you have people that you've put on the weekly, I want to repeat this, you have people that you've put on the weekly list to call to have the one of two conversations with. The one half of what you waste, or the IOL to pay tax on qualified plan distributions. So it starts with having people to call, and then as you move through the process with that client and you tell them how you get paid, one of the ways you get paid is their act of goodwill. If they think the work that you've done is phenomenal and most valuable, you're going to sit down and talk about those people. They know that respect them professionally and personally, that they believe would benefit from working with you and that you would enjoy working with. Now, pretty much word for word, these things are in your Roadmap University book study guide. But again, what I'm hearing from some of you when I do talk to you individually, you haven't been spending the time necessary to go back into that book that you got in the training and keep fine-tuning your skills. Because only if you're willing to do that would you have an expectation of really mastering some of these key ingredients. You've got to have people on a list to call, and you've got to set aside that 10 to 11 o'clock on Monday and Tuesday to do nothing but attempt to schedule those 4 appointments during the upcoming week. Now, once you've kind of gone from that referral process, we have this thing called the approach talk. Now, you'll remember in the approach talk, there are a few phrases you can use and or what I call probing questions, and there are also tools that you can use that are on the web-based Roadmap website, namely the approach talk. And I'm going to show you that again in a minute. But remember, whenever you meet with somebody, you always want to have the conversation with, you know, is mom and dad alive? And if they were sitting here right now talking about their proud son or daughter, what is it that they would tell me about you and your success professionally, personally, as a family person, and so on? And please don't be shy about it. I really want to hear what has made this business or made you so successful. And just shut up. And then the second question is, from a financial perspective, what, if anything, is keeping you up at night? From a financial perspective, what is keeping you up at night? And just zip it and give the person an opportunity to tell you what they're concerned about. Then you can maneuver within all of these tools to take them where you want to take them. The next question, of course, remember, these 3 questions are in your book. The second one is, if you were retired today, how much capital do you need after tax to live the way you want to live for the rest of your life, adjusted for inflation? The next one is, if something happened to you today, that drunk driver crossed the median strip, killed you, because we all know it only happens to other people. But if that happened, how much capital would you need to take care of those people and those things you care about? You just have to master those 3 questions in any conversation you're having with anybody in order to open up a dialogue that's going to make them a client. And the fourth one is, Bob, don't tell me what you wasted on, but how much would you say you waste every month? Now, I've heard from some of you that people are pushing back a little bit. You know, I don't know what that means. You know, how I don't waste anything. The rebuttal is, it's not up to me to tell you what wasting means, but whatever that means to you, about how much would you say you probably waste every month? You come right back with the question. And then the last one, of course, has to do with the qualified plan taxation issue, right? You may not be aware about the horrific taxation that faces you when you take money out of your IRA, 401k, pension, or profit sharing plan. I'd like to give you an idea of what that will look like and about how much after-tax income you would expect to have. Now, those are all of the questions that I have in my quiver. And if you just understand there's only those 5 or 6 questions, and you can, in any meeting, you can ask up to all 6 until you get the person to open up, and then you can take them on the Roadmap website wherever you need to take them. So for example, if I wanted to know from an individual, or if an individual wanted to know about how much they would need in capital at retirement to live the way they wanted to live for the rest of their life adjusted for inflation, right? So let's just go study group 6. And the person was 55 years of age. You put in whatever state, really doesn't matter. And all I'm going to do is say, Bob, if you were retired today, forget about any assets that you have. Forget about any passive income that you have. About how much annual tax-free income do you need? And he says $150,000. So this 55-year-old, I'm going to leave all of the defaults alone. I'm going to retire him at 66. I'm going to let this run to age 90. I am not going to ask any questions about the assets that he has. In other words, my only inputs are name, age, state, and asking the question that allows you to put in this number. Save and continue, generate results, and the first thing I want to do is I want to show him the scroll bar. Bob, with a $150,000 objective and 3% inflation, by the time you reach retirement, let's say at 66, you need 207. Bob, look at all of these numbers on an annual basis, how they're going up due to the impact of inflation. And in fact, you need to have assets that can cumulatively deliver, and you guys can see how I'm using my cursor, 7.6 million of cumulative cash flow during your retirement years. I then go up to retirement income legacy scenario, click on that, and I show him what he just saw. Here's your $150,000 goal, adjusting for inflation, and there's that 7.6 million of cumulative cash flow that has to come from assets. So Bob, what I can tell you is you need to have 4.6 million of assets after tax, growing at 4%, in order to meet that annual $150,000 goal adjusted for inflation, and all of it would be gone at age 90. Does that surprise you? Now, ladies and gentlemen, you can have access to this recorded webinar. When we're done with me going through these points, and before I open it up for Q&A, I can't think of any other resource that you could possibly listen to and watch over and over again that would fine-tune your skills until it becomes very natural for you to deploy them with your current clients and future prospects. Now, we talked about how much capital might you need if that drunk driver crossed the median strip and killed you. So I switch over to the widow planner. I go, Bob, your bride's age is, And he says 53. Now, listen carefully to the way that I tee up the question. Let's assume for a minute that you've got no mortgage on your house. Just assume that. Assume you have no insurance of any kind, nor any assets of any kind. So all we're talking about is you're gone. How much income do you want to provide your spouse to live the way that both you and she have been accustomed to? And he says, I want to make sure she has $100,000 a year. So you leave all these defaults alone. Run it through 90, 3% inflation, 4% return. Nothing else is input, just this. Because all we want is the raw amount of capital that would take care of this goal from 53 to 90. So you hit next. And what you get is the fact that, Bob, you would need $3.2 million of assets growing at 4%. You see how I'm using my cursor to take care of that $100,000 goal growing with inflation. I then scroll this up, and all of it would be gone at her age 90. Does that surprise you? And he says yes, he says no, he says whatever you said. Now, Bob, I'm sure you have some amount of insurance and other assets that would help meet this goal. I go back and I click on assumptions. Bob, about, notice that key word, about how much life insurance do you have? He says $1 million. Bob, about how much is sitting in your, I go down to this question here, about how much is sitting in your IRA, 401k, pension, or profit sharing? Just ballpark about how much. He says $800,000. And other assets you have earmarked in retirement, money that's in your brokerage account, etc. He says a couple $100,000. And Bob, I said to you before about the mortgage. Do you have any outstanding mortgage balance? Yep, about $400,000. I stop right there. I hit next. Now notice on the right-hand side in red it says current liability, $400,000. Notice how that has now come into the calculation. So that if Bob died today, he would now need $3.6 million to take care of the $100,000 goal growing with inflation and pay off the mortgage. Because remember, we asked him how much she would need to continue the lifestyle assuming there was no mortgage. He said $100,000. Now the assets that he has to meet the goal are the $1 million of insurance, the $200,000 in the brokerage account, and we factor in the after-tax value of the qualified plan, so $520. So he's got $1.7 million of assets, and that shows up right here. So we need $3.6 million of capital. He's got $1.7 million of assets. This means he needs $1.9 million of more insurance. Doesn't tell you what kind. It's merely doing the calculation. I've now walked you through how much capital somebody needs at retirement. For every one of your current clients, you should be doing this widow income calculator. Now remember, you always have to input the basic client information to be able to get to Widow Planner. You just can't go right to it. You've got to put some basic data in. So that's the second piece. We also talked about the fact that there are resources that you've got available to you, no pun intended with resources, that sit on the website when you're talking with a client. One of them is the client approach talk, and one of them is the market's PowerPoint presentation. These two tools are available in any conversation with a client. If you click on the client approach talk, which I just did, we let it populate. Let's make it big. The reason why I love to use this, above and beyond perhaps, I take that back. Oftentimes I'll use this after I ask the question about mom and dad. I'll just click in here and I'll say, Bob, look, at the end of the day, you can live, you can die, or you can experience some form of compromised living where you become disabled, or perhaps you need some type of long-term care. Now, if you live, everybody wants to plan for a secure future. Now, let me just pause right there, everybody. That could be your opportunity to then ask the question, Bob, about how much capital would you say you need at retirement to live the way you want to live for the rest of your life, adjusted for inflation? Geez, I don't know. You could then go right into the quantitative planning tool that does the retirement planning. Bob, a lot of people want to fund kids' college. Where do you think you stand in terms of being able to do that? You could then go right to the college calculator. Now, Bob, with respect to dying, what if it was premature? What if that guy crossed the median strip tonight and literally killed you? Who are the people and things you care about? Give them a chance to answer. My clients typically want to assure dependency period of income. So if you've got small children at home, at the end of the day, it's one thing to lose you as their father and their friend. It's another thing to displace them. We want to assure that they can stay in the home where everybody has lived, and we don't have to worry about any mortgage payments. Then we want to make sure that we take care of funding the kids' college. And of course, as I mentioned, we're going to assure there's no mortgage on the property, and if there's any outstanding debts, we're going to take care of that. So Bob, about how much capital do you think you need in order to take care of all those objectives? And then I go right to the widow income planner. Now you see what I'm doing today for all of you is, now that you've gone through the study group, I'm now sharing how it all comes together. You should be sitting here listening to this regardless of your level of success, and you should be saying to yourself, if I could only do it or say it the way that he does it. Not because I'm incredible, because I had great people train me, and I had to do this day in and day out. I drilled and rehearsed in front of them. This is the same thing I've been doing that I was taught in 1977. All I've done is taken all of that and I've basically brought it into the 21st century through the Roadmap planning suite. But this is what I was taught. This is the words I used, how I overcame objections. Nothing is really that new. And that's when you're a Roadmap partner and you're paying that very expensive monthly partnership licensing fee. These are all of the things you get and you will continue to get from us, not only in written form or PowerPoint form or calculating tools, but the fact that we have Open Forum Friday that runs at 8 o'clock California time, open to everybody that's on our platform nationwide. It includes executives of insurance companies, producers, different company affiliations, different perspectives. We've got people that license the program that are insurance professionals. We've got some that are qualified plan administrators. It's a plethora of people, and it's open forum. People will ask whatever questions they want. They'll share experiences, and I'll typically bring up a topic. For example, last week we talked about fiscal and monetary policy and the impact in the future on the market. But let me keep going here in the approach talk. If it isn't already enough, if I haven't been able to convince them by moving in and out of the quantitative planning tool, I'll also talk about compromised living. So Bob, what if you can't work? What if you couldn't keep everything going? What if anything would have to change? I give them a chance to answer that question. Bob, do you have enough passive income from investments to meet all of your current financial obligations, which include your typical living expenses, continuing to fund college, and if you don't, how can we assure the status quo? And wouldn't it be wonderful if whether you live or whether you die or whether you become disabled, that you knew exactly where you stand today and you had a plan to solve every one of those goals if we have a quantitative deficiency? Of course you would. 5 magic words. So with that in mind, let's really hop in and do a little preliminary analysis of where you might stand. And there's another transition for going to retirement, going to widow income, going to college. So this is how I use the approach talk. And then, of course, above and beyond this, we have the markets PowerPoint presentation. So if you slip in the resources and you go to the markets, I wish I could more emphatically find a way to tell you. Even if you couldn't do any of the things that I just shared with you, just playing the markets PowerPoint, asking a client a simple question. What is your view about the stock markets? And let that person have an opportunity to respond. Say, Bob, I want to show you some facts that I know you're going to be very pleasantly surprised about with regard to the history of the markets and why my clients really like to put money into assets that can grow with the market when the market goes up, but they are assured that when the market goes down, none of their principal nor any of their gains are lost. Does that have your attention? Now, Bob, now that you said that you want to see more about this, I'd want to walk you through a presentation because my clients have got to be philosophically aligned, you remember that in the training, with me. Otherwise, I will not allow them to allocate part of their assets to this type of an asset class. So let's take a look, and I go right through the markets PowerPoint presentation. I also want to remind you that we now have the cash flow on the website. And the beautiful part about this, if we now go back to client profile, and now there's an input here for cash flow. Let's suppose our client made $400,000 and had $120,000 of living expenses. Actually, let's make it $100,000. Now notice that living expenses include their home budget, any current insurance premiums, and anything that they are currently saving for college. It does not, it excludes money that they're putting into their 401k or IRA, in this example, let's say 20 grand, nor anything that they're saving after tax. And let's say in this case, he was saving $10,000 a year. Let's also assume for a moment this guy has $400,000 in his 401k and he has $100,000 of other assets. Now, once I put gross income in here and I put in current living expenses in here, this income is going to be affected by his current effective tax rate. Effective taxes, total taxes divided by total income. Now, if somebody was earning $400,000, their total taxes are not going to be $130,000 using a 35% bracket. So let's bring that down to 25%. Go save and continue, generate the results. And if you then go to the cash flow tab, you'll see here's his 400,000 of income, estimated taxes of 100, and so therefore he's got 300,000 of after-tax income. Down and dirty. He said his living expenses are 100,000. So now we've got 200,000 of income that he's doing something with. 20 is going to his 401k, 10 to other savings. So he's currently saving 30. So 300 minus 100 is 200, minus 30 for retirement savings. He's got, in this example, 170,000 of free cash flow that would be available to solve his problems: premature death, retirement, college funding. So if I now added the college planner, and he had a child whose name was Sloan, and Sloan was 6, and his goal was 40,000 a year of uninflated college costs, and if he had already saved 25,000 and he was saving 6,000 a year, notice that 6,000 a year. If this was true, that would be in his current living expense budget that he gave us. You hit next, and what we find that on top of his current savings of 6,000, the program tells us he needs to beef up that college savings by 7,000 a year. And remember, he has to do that between now and the child's age 18. So when you go to cash flow and then you click on revised, you'll remember from the current cash flow, he was 170 free cash flow. When you click revised, we start with 170, and as you can see, here's his additional college savings. Look what this says: dollars allocated to meet goals. New permanent insurance, additional insurance expense, additional savings for college. So at this point, if you did a college planner and calculated it, and if there's an additional amount to save, it automatically flows into the cash flow report, column D, additional savings for college. If you go back to the client profile at that point, and if you're now, after you've done the preliminary work for the client back at your office, if you're recommending new term insurance, and it has a $5,500 premium, and it's 20-year term, you've handled that. If you've recommended new disability insurance, and it's $4,000 a year, and the premiums would be paid until retirement, you've got that. If you're recommending some type of long-term care policy that's not an asset-based approach, let's suppose you've got a $6,500 long-term care premium, you would put that there. And let's suppose that due to the planning that you've done, you want him to put away $30,000 a year between now until retirement into an indexed universal life policy with AXA. So in other words, after you've done the planning and you've come up with all these insurance-based solutions, this is where you put them. You hit save and continue, generate results, go to cash flow. You'll remember the current one, we were at 170. When you click on revised, we start with the 170. Now notice column B. I want to take 30 of the 170, put it into the permanent insurance. So when you look under insurance classification here, you'll see new permanent life insurance, 30,000. That number has come in here, and it's scheduled to be paid until retirement. You're also incurring in red additional pure insurance expense. The new term, the new disability, the new long-term care, totaling $16,000. There it is. So out of the 170 of free cash flow, 30 is going to insurance for the IUL to fund retirement, 16 for the other insurance needs, 7,000 to beef up his college savings. He still has 117 that could be invested into other assets. Ladies and gentlemen, I've walked you through, from soup to nuts, the Roadmap web-based planning tool.